It's my 2016 Mustang GT. It's got about 80,000 miles on it now. And so it's definitely pad time. But I went and inspected the rears, and the rear rotors are pretty good. And the rear pads are pretty good. I've got a lot of meat on those still, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave those alone. But the front are definitely down considerably. So the front rotor's dished out pretty bad, if you can see that. And then the pad, you see that corner pad's down really low as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace the pads and replace the front rotors. All right, and this is all the goodies I got. The pads were the main thing I was gonna do, but the dished rotors, I went ahead and bought 2 new front rotors. I do everything in pairs. So if I do one side, I do the other side. This right here is the wheel bearing I'm going to be replacing, which is a one-piece hub unit. Unlike that Mercedes over there, where you actually had to press the bearings in, this is all one unit. So I think it was like 80 bucks, and I just replaced these 2 things, one on the passenger side, one on the driver's side. And this is my new wheel spacer. Anybody who hates these has an excellent opinion of them. I choose, like dating crazy women, I just choose to do it because I just buy off on all the problems you have with them. However, wheel spacers are a pain in the ass. They cause problems, and if you can do it, just buy wider wheels and tires and just roll down the road as is. I just choose not to do it. So I put wheel spacers on this when the thing was new, and wheel spacers are a mixed bag. I use them because this is a daily driver, and I do not like the wheel tuck that you get with the stock rig. I like to have the wheel offset so it lines up with the fender more directly. I also put lowering springs on it, which takes out the wheel gap, so it gets a nice thin wheel gap on it. The trade-off with wheel spacers versus spending the money to buy a wider wheel, which is the preferred way to do it, is that these wheel spacers are, in my experience, pretty much disposable. You don't want to reuse them once you take them off because they can be worn over time. So, like on the other side, I've already done. The wheel spacer came off okay. This side, not so much. What I've got here is the shoulder of this nut got stripped because it could not take the torque when I removed it. As a matter of fact, I think I got 1, 2, 3 of these loose. This other one started to strip on me as well. So there's 2 ways you can handle this. The first way is, if you're retaining the rotor, is you just get a cutting wheel and you cut at an angle here and you cut another angle here until you basically expose the stripped nut. So the second thing you can do to remove rotor when you have stripped out a nut, you can just take the whole assembly off, especially if it's all disposable. Like in my case, I'm not going to retain the use of any of this stuff except for the caliper. Drill 4 holes in the spindle cap. 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here, and then cut across until you've exposed them, and then chisel out the spindle cap until the whole business comes out. Place the drill here. Place the drill here. Now I'm going to cut this section through with my little cutting tool. By the way, another thing you should know is if you're going to pull this nut, you probably want to leave the caliper on when you pull it, because you want your buddy there to help you with the brakes. Apply the brakes when you're untorquing that. I'm shaking because I'm nervous. Yeah, go ahead. Got a big old Chinese wrench. Homemade breaker bar. So this is the back of the brake caliper, and I think most people would sort it out pretty quick. This is the mounting bolt, one upper, and that's 15 millimeter. There's another mounting bolt lower. It's another 15 that I can't get my hand to, but it's right down there. And then there's a 13 right here. Close enough. This is my old pad spreading gadget from back in the olden days. But you can use a screwdriver or whatever, but I still use it. I separate on the top, separate down here on the bottom. Spread these mothers a little bit, see how they go. The top nut comes out now. We'll save those for later. And then light comes out. There we go. And I just park that shit on top of it's a piece of the chassis, but whatever. It fits over there all right. And so then I'll spin this thing off and then take this whole assembly out. And then I do not need to worry about this business anymore. All right, 32 socket, impact driver in reverse. There we go. And hopefully it's gonna be easy peasy. That's right. I've been told this is a one-time use only item, so you have to replace it with a new one. Alright, so this right here is this spindle nut, axle nut, whatever you want to call it. You can secure these from any Ford dealership. I got this from AutoZone because I'm allergic to dealerships. This right here is the teeth for the ABS sensor that resides right here. There's like some electronic magic that goes on between the sensor and these little splines that tell the wheel when it's locking up or not. That kind of just slides on as is. All the way, yeah. I'll take this on. I start everything by hand, just cause anything's gonna go wrong. Like in relationships, it always goes wrong at the beginning. So, axle's probably spinning right now, so I'm gonna put the new rotor on. I'm going to put the calipers back on once I replace the pads, and then once that's in place, I'll get my partner to put the brakes on, and then I'll torque this down to where it needs to be. Right, before this goes on any further, I'm going to put anti-seize on the hub so that the next person who has to do this, because most likely I will not own the car anymore, will be able to pop this off just as well. Board portion. Let's see if goes on like that. And don't forget the horrid wheel spacers. Right. We'll put a little more anti-seize. Put more anti-seize on the back of this spacer because they have a tendency not to want to come off either. I didn't have to worry about it this time, but if for whatever reason you have a damaged rotor, a cracked rotor, if anything happens and you need to take these things off, you want to have anti-seize on these as well. Alright. I lined it up right. Alright, now. Alright, let's see. Third time might be a charm. That's where you're supposed to go in. That's pretty good. So the pads are in, I'm putting this clip on. In the event you ever are doing this and you discard your clip and you don't know what happened to it. So the lower section of the bracket is towards the assembly, and then this little nub, there's only one on the bottom, there's not one on the top. This little nub goes down, so this is the orientation. Mr. J. Strauss told me to always put the top pins in first, for some reason. So that's what I do. No particular reason. This bolt's keyed. So it's got a little shoulder on it. So it's got to go in here because the shoulder fits inside a seat. That's what allows you to tighten this thing up. So it only goes in one way. And you'll be spinning it forever if you don't get that set right. One grunt. Bottom pin. What in the world could I possibly use to do this? Maybe you? Would you work? Might you work? There she is. I was right the first time. Alright. So for those interested, this is 250 foot-pounds. That's what you're supposed to do. It requires a big breaker bar. It won't go anywhere, it's on jacks. Got it? So the other side's done. Pads, spacers, rotors. Pad, spacer, rotors. This is the one that I showed you how to do. And yeah, rotors are slightly different because this pandemic is going on and I couldn't source rotors from the same location that come from two others. So I'll see if it pulls or anything, but they spec the same. So I mic'd them and they looked okay, but we'll see. Obviously, this is the one I got from CJ Pony Parts, which looks a lot better than the other one that I sourced off Rock Auto. So I don't know, we'll see if it bites me ass. I don't race this thing. This thing's just a commuter. So, you know, all it needs to do is get me down the highway, get me stopped for stoplights. All right, so all done, just got done with the test drive and seating the pads. That required about a 4 or 5 time hard stop, 30 to 0, and then I did about a 10-mile road test to make sure everything was running okay on it. The pedal feel is right back to brand new, so it's really working well. The rotors look good, real happy with those. You can actually read the Brembo logo for the first time in years. That'll last a couple of weeks. Not terribly fastidious on cleaning this car as it's a daily, but that's it. So that's probably 4 to 5 hours work, maybe $500, I think. And got that done. So I did this video mainly to show the problems that you can have with wheel spacers and how to work around that problem. You can also cut them off, which I've done on the previous versions. If I ever have to do that with these, I'll phone that in. But in any event, other than that, I just showed a video for how to do the pad swap, how to do the rotor swap, and there's a bleeding procedure that you have to do, which I won't really include, but it basically is like any other brake bleed. You start at the back passenger corner, and you go to the back driver's side, and then passenger corner. You got 2 nipples on this sucker on each of the front calipers. And you go through that cycle once, see how the brake feel is, and you do it twice, and then it should be good the second time. So that's about it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, post them below.